you're live.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Free Assange Vigil. This is week 63. My name is Steve Poikinen. I am joined by my co-host Misty Winston and Jazz Handrew. Before we introduce tonight's wonderful guest, I need to run through some numbers. So let's go ahead and do that. Today marks 3,569 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange, 523 days since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the United Kingdom for a $4.2 billion IMF loan. We are now, 53 days remain for the Justice Department to file additional charges after Julian's rearrest on September 7th. This is day 2 of the second week of the extraordinary rendition show trial of Julian Assange that is taking place at the Old Bailey in London. And I can't stress this enough. If you are anywhere near London, please join the amazing human beings that have been out there every day protesting. Today is 1,201 days of incarceration in federal custody for Reality Winner. On the plus side, 182 days of freedom for Chelsea Manning. Chelsea is streaming on Twitch 4 days a week, Thursday through Sunday from 7 to 11 Eastern. And with that, I will turn it over to Andrew for the call to action, and we'll introduce our guest.
Yeah, I hope my video is coming through okay. But we have multiple call to actions, so I won't spend too much time describing all of them. But we do have, we do have our abysmal technological incompetence call to action that is up right now. And that's the latest step in demanding that Julian's trial be open. We are demanding a public video link as well as an open media gallery for the public viewing. And this is just following all of the technological issues that have happened with the reporter line, with the actual phone-in lines that the witnesses are using. We also have our call to action up with Reporters Without Borders. We have our call to action up contacting the Justice Department to educate them about Julian's situation, as well as a couple others. So I would encourage everyone to go and take a look. I will be putting at least one more up in the next day. I do have one queued up for TYT, but I'm just kind of thinking about how I want to roll that one out to the large scale. Yeah, just action number 4assange.com. We have all of them listed on there. If they don't immediately come up on the website, just hit refresh, because sometimes our website acts a little weird. That's why we're working on a new one. But with that, I would like to say hello to Misty Winston. How are you, Misty?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful.
Good.
And then we are joined by the always wonderful to have Ray McGovern. How are you doing, Mr. McGovern?
I'm doing fine so far.
Thank you. Good to hear. Thank you very much for joining us. As we kick off, we have some stuff we're going to talk about, but first I do want to just kind of get your opinion of how court has been going this week, if not the entire time that it's been in session for the second phase.
I'm sorry, are you asking me to comment on what's been going on this week?
Yeah, in court, because we've seen a lot of happenings in the last couple of days with Lewis and then Durkin.
With the two Lewises, the prosecutor Lewis and the witness Lewis, a lawyer, U.S. lawyer with incredible credentials. He presented the case about what would happen to Julian were he to be extradited. And the prosecutor, Lewis, did everything he could to punch holes in that, to dress up to put lipstick on the pig of the U.S. judicial system. It was very revealing how acerbic it became, and how impolite and how totally out of line the prosecutor was. He lost his temper at one point, and when they reconvened, he apologized to the judge. Now, Craig Murray, my good friend and Julian's good friend, of course, has a really nice, detailed account of all this from your man in the court, as he says it, or your man at the trial. You can read that. What I was reminded of today was how we got where we are today, why we got here, and why the United States government feels it's so important to make this example of Julian Assange, lest someone else try to do what Julian did. And there's no secret that that's what this game is all about. Leon Panetta, former CIA director and Secretary of Defense, said exactly that. We can't let anybody else think they get away with exposing U.S. war crimes. He didn't say U.S. war crimes, U.S. secrets, which of course were war crimes. That many of the charges that Julian exposed. So it's very clear what's happening here. It's also clear that it's a political thing. It's they're trying. The prosecution is doing everything they can to minimize the political nature of the charges against Julian. Why? Well, because the extradition treaty between the U.S. and the U.K. prohibits going after someone for political reasons in this case. So it's clearly political. The prosecution is denying that. There's every indication that Judge Barraza will accede to the people she consults whenever she takes a break. And we know those people. They used to sit in the front row. They are the legal advisors that are at the U.S. Embassy in London now. And she takes her orders and she'll do what she's told. So it's a pretty grim example of how far the English nobles have come in the last 800 years. I'm thinking, of course, of the Magna Carta, when the English nobles of that era wrested certain rights like habeas corpus, like other rights that had become basic in Western civilization. How that all is sort of evaporated because the U.S. doesn't want its secret dealings revealed by anyone, Julian Assange or anyone. And for some reason, the English nobles are just more inclined to kowtow, as the Chinese would say, acquiesce in whatever the U.S. tells them to do. It's a scandalous performance, but that's the way it's been so far.
So tomorrow, we are going to have the long-awaited testimony of Daniel Ellsberg in court. I believe he'll be joining in the second half of the day because when court goes live, it's about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning over in the far western time zone of California. So I just wanted to give you the chance to talk a little bit because we were talking a little before the show about the differences between Julian and the way he publishes information and Ellsberg and the way that he got information out and what the different implications are for the national security state. So I just wanted to let you talk about that for a little bit because I think that that's a really salient point.
Sure. Well, I should preface this by saying that Dan Ellsberg and I are very close friends. And I got to know him actually at the first teach-in on Iraq at American University, where I was asked to speak about the lies that led up to the attack on Iraq. The professor who asked me, I said, well, I'm happy to do that, but how much time will I have? And he says, 4 minutes. I said, 4 minutes? There are 100 lies. Okay, I'll do it in 4 minutes. One of the points I made in those 4 minutes was that these things have to be whistleblown, you know? There were, my guess is there were about 100 people in the intelligence services who knew that the intelligence had been fixed around the policy. Those words are used advisedly because that's exactly what the head of MI6 in London told Tony Blair. Well, that's before the attack, and it wasn't revealed until a year later. So they knew what was going on. Why is it? Why is it that not one of them, not one of my old friends who knows, who has a conscience, who saw what was going on, who saw what Cheney was doing, and how George Tenet and the others were just kowtowing, why he or she didn't do something to make sure Americans knew what was going on before the calamity of the attack on Iraq. Now, our record on that is stands up to close scrutiny because we saw what was going on, and we warned the president on the very day of Colin Powell's speech that this would lead to catastrophe. We told him, we gave Colin Powell a C for content, and we should have flunked him outright. We told the President Bush at the time, you need to widen your circle of advisors beyond those clearly bent on a war for which we see no compelling reason and from which we believe the catastrophic consequences are likely to be very large indeed. Well, that's nice, isn't it? We got it on the AFP wire that afternoon. Oh, that's pretty good, but nobody took notice of it. And Dan Ellsberg knew about that. And when I said at American University, we have to find a way to do this quickly and get enough attention to it, demonstrate that it's authentic, and preferably have documents. And Dan Ellsberg acknowledges, I said, that what he did was too late. So, two things, folks. You got to do it on time. You got to make sure you bring documents. Now, as I finished my little 4-minute speech, which became 8 minutes, who in the audience was there? Dan Ellsberg, when we met for the first time. And we've been talking ever since. He said, "You're exactly right." Now, that was 2003. 2004, we got together in Washington. And what we did was set up something that we call the Truth-Telling Coalition. Now, what was that all about? Well, that was to advise people who should have spoken up before the war in Iraq that, it is possible to do this, that Dan Ellsberg did survive and didn't spend the rest of his life in prison, and that it's really your duty. And is it hard? Yeah, it's really hard. But it's really your duty to do this. We had a 1.5-page statement here, and we had concrete suggestions as to how to get help from the ACLU, from POGO, the Project on Government Oversight, people willing to help anyone who had the guts to blow the whistle. Now, again, none of the intelligence analysts blew the whistle. The operatives, of course, never blow the whistle. They're doing the operations. I must mention here that 3 State Department Foreign Service officers did quit on the spot. One in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, Ann Wright. One in Washington, a special lecturer at Georgetown University, John H. Brown, and Brady Kiesling, who was a political counselor at the U.S. Embassy in Athens, quit on the spot. Brady was the first one. He issued a statement: I'm not going to be part of this government if they're going to start a war of aggression. And John Brown and Ann Wright did the same thing just about the time the war started. Now, John Brown, who's an incredible expert on Eastern Europe and Russia, and he's at Georgetown now. He told me, when I quit, I got a call the next week from the admin people, the administrative people of the State Department. They said, "Well, you were pretty smart, Mr. Brown." I said, "What do you mean, smart and quitting?" He said, "Well, no, your timing was excellent. You just qualify for a pension." And he said, "Ray, that's the last thing I thought about, pension. I thought about what my country was doing, and I quit. Getting a pension? That's nice, but that's not what I was hanging around for." So these are 3 people that had the spirit, the courage, the guts, and the integrity to quit on the spot when they saw, and they saw from afar. I mean, how much intelligence do you get in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, or Athens. Washington may be a little different. So what I'm saying here is that to redress this situation, we put out this call for truth-telling advocates, and we told them how they could get help, and we warned them about what to expect if they get caught, and we had to just say, truth-telling is a patriotic thing. Yeah, you run a risk, but look what happened. Dan was too late. What happened? Well, 58,000 American GIs were killed. 3 million with an M, Vietnamese dead. Okay, so don't do it too late. And like Dan did, bring the paper, bring the documents. Now, how many of you have seen The Most Dangerous Man in America? Whoa, you need to see it. It was an Academy Award finalist. And it was a documentary about how Dan Ellsberg did what he did and how Henry Kissinger called him, I think Ellsberg is the most dangerous man in America. And he was. Now, he did it too late, but he did do something. And if you're seeing that document, you see his children helping him work this Xerox every night. Xerox. There were thousands of pages. They all had to be declassified, cut off at the top and the bottom. It was a major operation. Okay, now why do I stress all that? Well, that was 2004 when we all got together and said, look, it's possible to do, takes guts, there will be repercussions, but you need some way to do it on time, and you need some way to do it with documents. Okay, now we never thought in our wildest dreams, that 5 or 6 years later, there would be a genius. I mean, I have to tell you, Julian Assange is about the smartest guy I ever ran into. And I've run into some pretty smart guys. Some genius who figures out a secure way, so that people can do what we were advocating they should do in 2004. It's out there with Chelsea Manning. It's all hanging out there, and it's all in paper, and it's all authentic, and nobody says that it's contrived or anything, because WikiLeaks doesn't fool around with what they put out. Okay, so that's the background here. A sea change in whistleblowing, a way to demonstrate not only the war crimes going on in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And I hope everyone has seen that terrible footage of collateral murder, but also the diplomatic realities. I'll just mention one because it's my favorite. After World War II, I usually say the war, that dates me. After World War II, it sort of became pretty obvious that the Russians and we were going to have this contest. But after the Berlin Wall fell, everything kind of changed, all right? And George H.W. Bush, to his credit, called Mikhail Gorbachev and said, Mikhail, I'm really sorry for your troubles now. East Europe is falling apart. We don't want you to do anything rash, so rest assured that we will not dance on the Berlin Wall. We're not going to take advantage of you. What we do need is to get together quickly and figure out how to handle this thing. And Gorbachev says, okay. And Bush says, well, let's meet. Can you meet next month? This was November, mid-November, when the Berlin, what's it, 89, right? So Gorbachev says, yeah, sure. Well, let's meet in Malta. Can you wait 3 weeks? Yeah, okay. So they meet in Malta. And again, Bush says, look, we're not going to take advantage of this, but we do want to work this thing out. I'll send James Baker, my Secretary of State, talk to Shevardnadze, your Secretary of State, and you yourself, and we'll figure out how to do it. Okay, well, they made a deal, okay? The deal was this. We, and the Russians especially, would accept a reunified Germany. Wow. Now, why do I say that? I guess most people don't realize that everybody was against a reunified Germany, including me. I said, the whole shtick, the whole purpose of NATO was, as the first Secretary General said, to keep the Americans in, to keep the Russians out, and to keep Germany divided. So Germany would never be able to do what it did in World War II. And here we are saying to Mikhail Gorbachev and Edward Shevardnadze, look, we want to reunify Germany. Yeah, we know you lost 27 million people at the hands of the Germans in World War II. Yeah, we know that. But overcome your fears. We'll keep them in NATO. We won't let them get a nuclear deterrent. And we promise not to move NATO 1 inch farther east toward Russia. Well, Gorbachev and Shevardnadze swallowed that pill. They pulled 20,000 troops out of East Germany, and they believed that Bush was good for his word. Now, as you know, Bill Clinton reneged on that. There were 12 NATO members in those days, and now there are something like 27, and they're all to the east of what was East Germany. Now, the reason I mention all that is because we have the cables. We have the U.S. State Department cables showing what the deal was. And we knew going in what this would mean. Here we have lots of rumors about the U.S. trying to not only include Poland and Hungary and Czechoslovakia, but also Ukraine and Georgia. And so the Russian foreign minister, what's his name? I'll come to it in a second. He invites our ambassador who is Bill, I will remember these names in a second. I hadn't really prepared to go into this detail, but he says, come into the foreign ministry. I want to talk to you. Okay. So it's the same Russian foreign minister as now, Sergei Lavrov. And this was Bill, whatever his name was. Okay. He says, look, Bill, do you understand what "niet" means? And I know. He says, well, "niet" means "niet." And if you try to incorporate Ukraine or Georgia into NATO, that's a red line for us. Go tell your superiors in Washington, "niet" means "niet." That's what it is. Now, what does Bill do? He reports it back to the State Department, and they thumb their nose at it. And 3 months later, at a NATO summit in Bucharest, the declaration says Ukraine and Georgia will become members of NATO. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because people don't believe what McGovern says. I don't know why, but they don't, all right? But if I have a piece of paper that looks exactly like all the State Department cables from Moscow that I read during my career, which must number about 3,000, okay? If I have that piece of paper, then it's indisputable. It's authentic, ipso facto. And so those are the kinds of things that Julian revealed. We can't have that. We can't have that, okay? And so they decided to make an example of him. Now, as things worked out, of course, they used all kinds of ruses, including this. It's by the old intelligence playbook. You accuse people of sexual misbehavior, rape, and stuff like that. It's out of the. It's the old technique, and none of it was true, as Niels Meltzer has testified. Niels speaking fluent Swedish and going into those records and saying they were fraudulent, they were falsified by the police. I wonder who told the Swedish police to falsify those records. I think I have a good guess. Anyhow, that's how Julian Assange ended up. And the point is, of course, that when Dan Ellsberg, and please do see The Most Dangerous Man in America, when he had his little kids working the Xerox machines into the wee hours of the night, he had it right. He had it that you needed paper, you needed documents. Now, Xeroxing all that stuff so much and having all this stuff to dump on the press? Well, it worked, but it was by Dan's own admission too late. Okay. Now here comes Julian Assange. Xerox machines? Forget about it. Time lapse? Forget about it. Authenticity? No problem. Okay. Now you can't have that sort of thing. And Julian still represents a threat to the powers that be. Now, I'm saying Julian in broadest terms. Julian or those who would have the conscience and the guts and the acumen to do what Julian has done. Think about 9/11. Think about it. My NSA colleagues who were in office, working hard at very senior levels at 9/11, knew and found out that NSA had the information necessary to stop those attacks. Kirk Wiebe and Tom Drake believe that General Hayden, who was heading up NSA, purposely hid that information from probably everyone but Dick Cheney, who we reason told Hayden, don't spread that around. Don't spread that around. In other words, it wasn't spread around. We're searching for the reason why. There was all kinds of information with the CIA, with the FBI. With the FBI, they had Moussaoui. They captured this guy. The Minneapolis guys in the FBI were on the alert. They had good contacts with the people training these pilots. And Moussaoui was really strange. He was interested in learning how to fly a plane, but didn't care much about taking off or landing. Hello? He also had lots of money. He paid in cash. So these guys devised a device to arrest him, and they got him, okay? And they got his computer. And it was a violation of the immigration statute or something like that. And then they said, look, we got to get into his computer. This guy's bad news. We might be having a hijacking. The head of the FBI office in Minneapolis said, look, if we don't get into those computers, next thing you know, you're going to have attacks on the tall buildings in New York. That's what you're going to have. It's on the record, folks. That's exactly what he said. He was denied permission. Now, we asked people. We asked these same people. Colleen Marley was there, of course, as the counselor. We said, would you have gone to 9/11 under those sorry. Would you have gone to WikiLeaks under those circumstances? And the answer was yes. The same with respect to Bogdan Zakovich, one of our veteran intelligence professionals for sanity. He ran the red teams for the Federal Aviation Administration. They could penetrate any airport, any airplane, anytime. And he was so frustrated for 2 years before 9/11. They testified to Congress, but they were ignored. Would they have gone to WikiLeaks? Bogdan says, I surely would. And the two people that were working with him said the same thing. How about Iraq? Well, I told you already. There were about 100 intelligence analysts that knew what a fiasco this was. They knew well ahead of when the Senate Intelligence Committee decided in a bipartisan report that the intelligence before Iraq was uncorroborated, contradicted, and or non-existent. Jay Rockefeller, senator from West Virginia, head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, uncorroborated, contradicted, or even non-existent. I ask you what non-existent intelligence looks like, all right? Now, what I'm saying here, of course, is if there were one soul, just one, that had the conscience and a certain confidence that if he had some way to do this discreetly where he might not be put in jail for the rest of his life, he would have done it. Of course he would have done it. So there are two good examples. Now, I could add several others. There's COVID. My God, we know now that the president was downplaying it, that he was falsifying the threat. How many thousands of people, Americans, would be alive today if Bob Woodward had decided, well, he's an American first, and he doesn't really need any more money from royalties, so he's going to tell the truth. The president just told him he's lying through his teeth. This is really serious. Bob Woodward should have done that. And there are countless examples of this, especially high officials. Think of Richard Clarke, the counterterrorism expert before 9/11. Now, he waited till his book came out, all right? Months after 9/11. James Risen of the New York Times, who discovered in July of 2004 that Bush and Cheney had been illegally surveilling you and me and everybody else in the country. He was persuaded by his betters. No, it's too close to the election. 2004, July, okay? Now, Risen was not allowed to tell that story until December 2005, because he said, hey, my book is ready, and that's a chapter in my book. Then and only then did the New York Times publish it. Now, I asked James Risen in a public meeting, I said, did you ever think of being a whistleblower? You know, did you ever think of maybe saying, hey, this is more important. Do we want 4 more years of George Bush and Cheney? Or, you know, maybe I won't get so many royalties on my book a year and a half hence. So he said, well, we don't do that. So what I'm saying here is that what Julian Assange has shown is that if you're smart enough, you're technically driven enough and knowledgeable enough, and you show yourself to be authentic, and you can protect your sources, well, he's the whistleblowing method of the future. And you know what he's done, not only with Iraq and Afghanistan, the State Department cables, and countless other things, Guantanamo and Israel. He hasn't, you know, what he gets, he publishes. Not least the DNC emails that showed that Hillary Clinton had stolen the nomination from Bernie Sanders, pure and simple. It's right there in those emails, okay? That's why they hate him. And they also hate him for one more reason, and that is that in March of 2017, he got leaked to him. Now, it's not like Julian Assange hacks things. He got leaked to him what's called Vault 7. Now, just a word on Vault 7, and I'll stop this little monologue. Vault 7 was a bunch of CIA offensive cyber tools. Okay? Now, when Julian announced he had them, and mark this, please, he said, the revelations in Vault 7, the various kinds of cyber tools, are more comprehensive than all the information that Edward Snowden revealed in Hong Kong when he came out and revealed those information. Wow. So what have we seen? We've just seen the tip of the iceberg. But in middle of March, Julian published the cyber tools that showed, for example, that one of them could take control of your car and make it go 110 miles an hour and crash, and you'd be dead. And we know that has happened, okay? Another one was, you think your TV is off in your bedroom, but it's really on, right? And if you don't have video and audio, at least you have the video, you have the audio of what's going on in your bedroom. That was another tool. But on the 31st of March, 2017, Julian revealed the most damaging one, and that was called Marble Framework. Marble Framework? Yeah, that's just the name of the tool. What did that allow you to do? Well, that allowed you to hack into a computer or a server, disguise who it was that hacked in, and leave little telltale signs showing that it was somebody else. Ooh. Now we learned from this document that they worked in 5 languages: Persian, Arabic, North Korean, Chinese, and Cyrillic, Russian, okay? So those Russian breadcrumbs, those Russian things that were left behind to show that it was Russia that hacked into the DNC computers or server puts a little suspicion on who was really responsible for that. Not to even mention that this guy, Guccifer 2.0, is demonstrably a fraud. We think we know who we don't use he, she, or it for, we use non-sexist language for Guccifer 2.0, but we think we know his initials at least. Anyhow.
Are they CIA?
Well, no, I'm thinking JB. First name John, last name I forget what it is. Anyhow, what's at stake here, and what happened right after that? I mentioned it was March 31st, right? Well, less than 2 weeks later, on the 13th of April, Pompeo gets up there at a think tank in Washington and says, Julian Assange is a demon. Now, don't laugh. I didn't have much truck with demons. But if the Secretary of State or the head of CIA believes in demons, my God, we have to take that seriously. All right? Okay. He says he's a demon and he's a non-state hostile intelligence agency. Oh, wow. There's a new animal, isn't it? Non-state hostile intelligence agency. Well, they went after him then big time. They put the screws to the Ecuadorians. Julian was isolated pretty much from outside correspondence for a while. And then about a year later, he was dragged out unceremoniously from the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And he looked like this. And I should probably explain that's why I look like this. Probably even look worse than Julian did. But I thought that there needed to be some concrete way to identify, to express solidarity with Julian and what he had been through. And this is the only thing I could really think of. And I noticed that some of the beards are very prominently in display here. Andrew's not the least. And I compliment them all for being part of the Julian Assange Beard Association. I could talk for a while more, but I wanted to give this background because this was a whole new animal, a different of genus, not just species, a way that you could do all the things that Dan Ellsberg wished he could be able to do on time. What we appeal to folks to do, all of us, several of the signatories turned out to be members of Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, as well as Dan Ellsberg and others. And finally, all of a sudden, out of the blue, comes this incredible method, which allows you to do this securely, quickly, and with plausibility, because there is authentic verification of these documents. Now, governments can't have that. Because if that's known, and if people get away with doing that, then people who know about unnecessary wars or 9/11 or COVID-19, for God's sake, then if they have a conscience at all, if they have a smidgen of the conscience that drove those 3 State Department Foreign Service officers to quit on the spot, well, now they have a way to tell the whole world. Except now what they're doing to Julian is going to make it even more difficult and make people more reluctant to do this kind of thing. It won't shut it off because there are enough good people in the world that will do it anyway, do it some way, and find a way to exploit the technology that is far beyond the Xerox and quicker and more authentic than anything you can imagine. That's a real threat for governments that thrive on secrecy. And in my view, that's why they're going after Julian Assange, my good friend, with such vigor.
Ray, real quick, you had mentioned watching Collateral Murder at the beginning of your story time there, and I wanted to show you a picture from one of our actions in DC last week. I don't know if you can see it on the screen or not, but we did a a light projection onto the front of the Department of Justice building, and we showed Collateral Murder, and we showed Juan Passarelli's documentary, and we played a couple of Action for Assange's teach-ins. And I think that right there is just one of the coolest pictures that we got from last week.
Bravo.
Did you get a chance to it was a documentary that was released a few days ago on German public television, and they interview Stella Morris. They talk about everything that she's been through, and there's a bunch of there's a segment with Leon Panetta. I don't know if you got a chance to see this or not. I'll email it to you if you haven't.
I haven't seen it, no, but I know that at CDF, at Zweites Deutsches Fernsehen, they call it the second program, ran some really authentic stuff from Niels Melzer back about 4 or 5 months ago, which was really quite revealing and the only candid representation of why they're after Julian and why Niels Melzer has shown that he's been tortured psychologically. It was quite a breakthrough, and it was one of the two major German TV outlets, ZDF, that's the second German program.
You're muted, Steve.
I'm muted, dang it. The reason I asked is because Kevin Gostola put together a thread about this segment of the documentary with Panetta, and he more or less right up front admits let's see, there it is, that the entire reason for this case and this prosecution is exactly to hold up Julian Assange as an example to would-be truth tellers and say, look what happens to you if you dare publish factual information about the U.S. government. He says, let's see, quote, all you can do is hope that you can ultimately take action against those that were involved in revealing that information so you can send a message to others not to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's a direct quote from former CIA Director Leon Panetta outlining the entire purpose of the Trump administration going ahead with this trial. That can't surprise you, but I would like to expand on this a little bit. Like how prevalent in the CIA is it for people to have this sort of desire to punish whistleblowers?
Quite prevalent.
Oh, and journalists and publishers.
Well, that's why I mentioned Panetta. I'm in debt to Costola, who does a terrific job. Kevin does, and what he said was proof positive, in my view, that this is a case where it's a political case and expressly ruled out in terms of a way to proceed against someone according to the U.S.-UK extradition treaty. It expressly outlaws, says you can't do policy stuff. You can't do this kind of prosecution. So, Panetta, he's one of these. He says things because he doesn't really care if anybody is upset about it. I remember when he testified to whether we could go to war against Libya or Syria, and he was testifying before Congress, and one of the senators said, "Now, what do you think you need in terms of permission?" And he said, "Well, we try to get a coalition together, and we try to get NATO in line." And it was it was that senator from Georgia who became the attorney general. Sessions. And he said, now, yeah, but what kind of approval you need? Well, we get the coalition going, and we get enough people lined up, and and Sessions looks, he says, I don't. That's not the way I read the Constitution. You don't have the. You don't have. It's the Congress that has that power. And Panetta says, we're going to do what we have to do. We're going to do it so that we protect America. Now, there you go. In other words, these people are so full of hubris, so full of arrogance, and not least, so eager to intimidate anyone. In other words, we run this ship, don't even think of challenging it, that you get statements like that from Panetta, which I dearly hope, Julian's lawyers will exploit to the fullest, showing this really is a political prosecution, a political attempt to extradite someone for telling the truth. And of course, what Julian has done, and this is often lost sight of, is the truth. No one has ever accused Julian of releasing fabricated or untrue or doctored or incomplete documents. He releases what he gets, and he lets the public decide what the significance, what the answers really are about how important it was. And he did that with the DNC emails as well. And of course, that's another reason where they're out to get him. And if you need more reasons to be out to get Julian Assange, well, again, many don't realize this. You all do. But Ed Snowden goes to Hong Kong because he knows it's the only way he can get out of America without being caught. He couldn't go east, he had to go west, okay? Now he gets into Hong Kong, and the first thing he tells Glenn Greenwald and others is, I fully expect to be wrapped up pretty soon. CIA station is right a couple blocks down the road here. They don't know I'm here, but they'll find out for sure. So let's get with it here. I have a lot of stuff to tell you, okay? Now, miraculously, even after several days of live transmissions and so forth, and Glenn Greenwald and others, Laura Fortress, all of a sudden, we find out that Ed Snowden's on a plane to Latin America via Moscow. Now, how? Lordy, as James Comey would say, Lordy me. How did that happen, huh? I'll tell you how it happened. Julian Assange was hell-bent on making sure that what happened to Chelsea Manning didn't happen to Ed Snowden. Did he have a personal relationship or deal with it? No. Ed didn't give Julian one scrap of paper. Now, how do I know this? Because next to the last time I saw Julian in the embassy in Ecuador, I said, Julian, I really respect a lot of stuff that you've done, but you have my utmost respect for getting Ed Snowden out of Hong Kong. Now, Julian is on the taciturn side. Usually didn't display a lot of emotion, but he jumped off the sofa and he said, yes. He says, we had to make sure that he was a free man, as free as you can in Moscow right now, that he could escape. And so I called in all my chits, all my friends from Southeast Asia. I sent Sarah Harrison, an incredibly gifted young woman, to help him out, and it worked. We hit him in some little slum of Hong Kong where I had contacts nobody else would even go, okay? So what am I saying here? I'm saying this guy, Julian, is a real threat to our democracy, right? Look at all the things he's done in revealing things and getting Ed Snowden free. Now, of course, Ed was headed to Latin America. The only reason he ended up in Moscow was because the U.S. State Department revoked his passport as he was in the air from Hong Kong to Moscow. So where's he going to go? Well, I would have to say this. The Russians, to their credit, said, look, international law requires that if you ask for political asylum under these conditions, we will give it to you. Now, I'll just add one little thing here. Everybody says, Putin bad, Putin intelligence, Putin KGB. Well, Putin was KGB. So think about his outlook on life. He's got to make this decision. Ed Snowden has given away the family jewels. He's seeking political asylum. Do I want to give an example to my former KGB colleagues that it's okay to give away the family jewels and somebody will give you asylum, political asylum? I'll bet that Putin really went through some gyrations as to what he should do. And I just say outright, he did the right thing, not only because Ed Snowden's a friend of mine, but because international law required it. Nobody has had the guts to do it. And ironically, Ed is safer in Russia and wherever he is in Russia than he would be in Bolivia or Cuba or any place like that. So these ironies play big and strong. And if you need yet another reason for the U.S. to go after Julian Assange and to just show that you cannot do these things and get away with it, we're going to put you in a hole in Colorado for the rest of your life. Well, that's part of the calculus, and it's part of the background that I thought it might be good to adduce today as we reflect on what's going on now.
I don't want to get yelled at for dead air, but I do want to give Misty a chance here, because last Tuesday it was really convoluted. We had, just because of we were shooting in front of the DOJ and it was hella loud, and we had on Mike Bellington from the Executive Intelligence Review, who was both incredibly supportive of Julian Assange and a free press and WikiLeaks, but also like wrapped in this sort of adorable fantasy that Donald Trump was somehow like a very good guy and also totally in charge of the country, except for all of the times that he's not in charge of the country, which is completely centered around the case of Julian Assange. And my freaking laptop, I pulled a QC Lewis. My laptop was running out of battery and I had to go real quick.
And you were in a hotel with cocaine and hookers?
I was not, in fact, in a hotel the night before with cocaine and hookers. I was tired, and I was in Washington.
You guys were so funny that morning. Seriously, guys, if you're watching this now and you haven't heard me already say this, go watch it. It's funny. It's so funny. It cracks me up. You guys were so tired, and you just called me out. You just called me out now, kind of a little bit, because I'm like been really quiet, and I just like you called me out, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're hosting a show. When Ray's on, I just like kind of listen. Then I kind of forget I'm hosting a show, and it's like, oh, story time with Ray. Here we go. You know, like I just sit back and listen, and I kind of forget where I am for a second. So, yeah, I still think that Ray needs his own show. He needs his own show. Story time with Ray. I would totally watch that. Totally.
Make it a 15-minute segment on Slow News Day every other week.
Yeah. Amazing.
Oh, but you got no questions? No?
Yeah. Sorry. I was just, I kind of want to know what Ray thinks about is he noticing a kind of groundswell of support suddenly? Because I kind of want to believe that there is one, but I don't know if it's actually happening or if it's just me being wishful thinking. But it's also like 24/7 what I'm doing right now. So, I'm kind of in a bubble. But are you seeing any more support? Have you, seen any more people talking about it? Have you seen any, I don't know, just more action kind of, in discussions about the Assange case in general?
Yes, I have, Misty, and it's encouraging. What I'm not quite sure as an analyst is how to separate the simple fact that the the inquiry is underway again, and why that, it would be normal for this to peak in these weeks. But I'm encouraged. There are a lot of people that are realizing what the difference is here. And, when I think about the treachery, the cowardice of the mainstream media, well, isn't that being held up to ridicule here? The New York Times, I remember writing an article 2 years ago where a lawyer for the New York Times says, well, we benefited from Julian Assange, and now they're trying to prosecute him. And well, luckily they can't prosecute him because that would mean we'd be prosecuted too. So we'll be thankful for small favors. There is a First Amendment here, and well, that was 2 years ago. Now the New York Times, the Guardian, and all those people are bloodthirsty, are kind of just following the diktat from Washington as they normally do. When I say normally do, no, that's not right. I've never seen it so bad. I like to think this is abnormal. It has been a trend. Oh my God, I've never seen the mainstream media so. I mean, here's an example. How about the Russians paying bounty to the Afghan terrorists to kill American soldiers?
Oh yeah, let's talk about that for a second.
Talk about
that was special.
It's ridiculous is what it is. And the fact that anybody, come on, you guys, it's been like, what, 4 years of this, and every single bombshell is like completely upended and debunked. And it's embarrassing at this point that people are still talking about it's a real thing.
Yeah. Well, the general McKenzie came out and said, we have nothing to confirm that now. And of course, that was completely missed in the press. In other words, if they mention it, it'll be on page 19 under 2 ads for very attractive bras. I mean, it's a travesty. So
there are still members of Congress calling on Trump to speak on it. I mean, just 2 days ago, I think Tammy Duckworth tweeted out that it's a shame that President Trump has been silent on the bounties or whatever. And I'm like, lady, that's been debunked. Why are you still talking about this?
Well, they watch Rachel Maddow, you see, and so do all my friends. Not all of them, but I go back to New York where I went to university, and I have these discussions with my friends, and they look at me as though I literally have 2 or maybe 3 heads.
Yep.
The bizarre things that I'm saying, because they know what the New York Times has said, and of course they don't know what the New York Times has not said, like the Russian hack theory has gone bust from the horse's mouth testimony of CrowdStrike's president. They don't know anything about that. And you know what? They don't believe me. And you know why they don't believe me? Because I can't show them a piece of paper. Now, I could print out the testimony that Sean Henry, the head of CrowdStrike, made before the Schiff Committee in December of 2017. Okay, that's how long the House Intelligence Committee knew that there was no forensic evidence that the Russians hacked the DNC emails. I could show them that testimony, but then they'll say, "Who's Sean Henry? Oh, what's CrowdStrike?" And the more I have to educate them, the more they'd say, "Well, Ray, you seem to be really interested in this stuff, but Rachel says that they're really bad guys, and paying bounties to kill America, that should and Trump won't say a word about it to Putin. I mean, it's just so awful. I've never seen the like of it. I don't know what's going to happen."
I think that this is the real fight that we find ourselves in. That's why we try to get people to pay attention to this, because the battle for this information and the battle against this propaganda. I mean, Steve says it all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country on earth. I mean, it's crazy how terrible our media is on a daily basis. So that's really the real battle is, I mean, these people have no idea what's going on in their own country. They're clueless. People who watch Rachel Maddow are not informed in any way. And that's really kind of the battle we face.
It's worse than not informed. They're misinformed from an ideological perspective. And, I don't know how it's going to all come out here, but it's coming to a head. This U.S. attorney, John Durham in Connecticut, has got this investigation going. We know all kinds of things that happen now. We know that Robert Mueller's right hand men and women wiped their cell phones before they gave them to the Department of Justice Inspector General. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that need to be divulged. Now, what's going to happen? This is really important because on this will depend how the election goes in many respects. What I'm thinking is that Trump, I should acknowledge that in my view, call me odd, okay, but I judge a president by what he or she does to the poorest people in our country. I buy this Judeo-Christian Muslim ethos, which says you take care of the widow, the orphan, the refugee, the emigre. And in that respect, Donald Trump is the worst president we ever had. I say that every time I talk, but you know what? That doesn't mean that everything he says is a lie. Just 95%, okay? When he talks about the deep state, when he talks about efforts to prevent him from becoming president and emasculating him when he became president, he's telling the truth. And guess what? The people who did that to him were so sure that Hillary is going to win that they didn't even take rudimentary steps to hide their tracks. So it's all in computers, it's all in hard copy, and Durham has all of it. Now, what's he going to do? Well, that depends on whether Trump has any courage at all. He's not big on courage, but he's been warned. He's been warned by Chuck Schumer publicly that you don't cross the intelligence community, the deep state, because they have 6 ways to Sunday to get back at you, okay? And they do, okay? So is Trump going to face them down? Is he going to tell Barr to tell Durham, look, let it all hang out. Let it all hang out now before the election. You don't have to prosecute anybody now, but let it hang out. I don't know. I'd have to guess that he's not going to do that. If he doesn't do that, the deep state wins, and the deep state will be even more alive when Joe Biden comes into office and they come and say, now, Mr. President-elect, we have this dossier, and we haven't approved. A lot of it's not corroborated, but we have this dossier on you. I just want to let you know, just so you know, Mr. President, just so you know exactly what they did, what James Comey did to Donald Trump on the 6th of January, 2017, 14 days before he became president. So the deep state's going to win this one unless there's enough outcry by the likes of us that we get into the mainstream media and say, look, look, Durham's got the goods on these guys. He's already got one guy pleading guilty. How about all these guys that wiped their phones? How about all these people who perpetrated this Russiagate hoax? And I will say it's a hoax. Now, just because President Trump says it's a hoax doesn't mean it can't be a hoax. It is a hoax. And people don't realize that. And when I say that, oh, you're trying to help Trump. This is a real dilemma. This is a real dilemma, okay? Let me just finish here. McGovern has to decide. Is the truth pristine, pure? Is it such that you tell the truth no matter what, even if it might help Trump? Well, the way I answer that is, well, that's easy. I took a solemn oath several times to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Okay, there's nothing in there about that oath expiring, and there's nothing in there about me getting too tired. I'm getting pretty old, but I'm not too tired. Or if I get tired, I say, no, I'm not too tired. So what I do is tell the truth. And if that redounds to Trump's benefit in this one, I can't say insignificant, in one very significant area, then that's okay, because we need to know what went down here. It's going to happen again. It's going to happen again in spades, no matter who the new president is.
So do you have any concern about the larger issue that if President Trump chooses to turn a blind eye to what the Obama administration's Justice Department did, that it will be something that he uses against his political rivals in the same manner and fashion?
Well, if I understand your question, Andrew, that's what I was trying to say. That if Trump chickens out, and he's got a record of chickening out, I mean, on these kinds of issues. Think 3 years ago when he said, "Aha, the law requires me to release all the documents having to do with the JFK assassination, documents held by the FBI and CIA and others, and I'm going to do it." That was in the morning. In the afternoon, he got up and said, with respect to what I said this morning, well, I'm not going to do it. I've talked to the CIA and the FBI, and they said, no, I better not do it. We'll revisit it in 6 months. Huh? Okay. Oh, so McGovern made a little note in his paper calendar there, inquire in 6 months. I don't know if anybody else inquired, but when I did, everybody said, what was that again? What? We don't remember anything like that. So there's a concrete example, and it's very germane because, in my view, it was this combination of CIA, FBI, National Security Apparatus, Joint Chiefs of Staff that did John Kennedy in. And that was the cornerstone moment there. That was the liminal moment. And ever since then, these people have been far too close to full power and never closer to full power than now under the Trump regime.
So I want to pivot a little bit here back to the court proceedings that we had go on. And I want to most specifically ask you about what you think of the way that court has been progressing. Because on Monday last week, we saw, I believe it was Mark Feldman's testimony get cut short because of technical issues. So we lost the second half of the first day. Mark Feldman had to then testify in the second day. So we lost the second half of the second day of the trial. The third day proceeded as normal, which was last Wednesday. On Thursday, we had QC Lewis, the prosecutor Lewis. I believe QC actually stands for Queen's Counsel, if I'm not mistaken. I got corrected by that in chat on Monday. But we saw him forget his laptop charger, forget all of his official paperwork, not be able to connect on the video, but only audio. And then Mrs. Dobbins waved the Corona flag. Proceedings were suspended. So we lost half of day one, half of day two, and then all of days 3 and 4. And then yesterday, we actually had court get closed up early again because of perceived technical issues. So we have, out of the 6 or 7 days of the court proceedings that were supposed to have happened, we've had about 4 full, maybe 5 full days of court at this point. And I was just wondering, as someone that's more inclined to sort of understand these kinds of things, do you think that there will be further delays and that the court trial will stretch out past the 3-week point? Or do you think that the U.S. prosecution will just motion to dismiss witnesses due to time constraints?
Well, as the Germans would say, jetzt bin ich überfragt. Now I am over-asked. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. It would be anybody's guess. So I'm going to punt on that one, Andrew.
That's fair. Did you have any other impressions from court? Because we've seen QC Lewis, the prosecutor, multiple times now loses cool with witnesses, loses cool with the judge herself on 2 separate occasions, one most recently having to apologize. And this is after Vanessa Breitzer has basically act like the concierge of the State Department. So do you think that there's anything here that Lewis in and of himself could be dismissed as a prosecutor for behaving in this way? Or have you ever seen anything like that where in a high profile case, a junior attorney such as Dobbins or the head prosecutor would be replaced?
Well, this is all, this trial or hearing or whatever it's called properly is sui generis. When you ask if I've ever seen anything like this before, I have to say ipso facto no, because this is so unusual. And, you know, when you look at how arrogant and how right up front the oppressive tactics of the judge and others have been, I can only conclude that this is all very, very intentional to show any would-be whistleblower or any would-be helper of whistleblowers like Julian, this is what you're going to get if we get our clutches on you. And as you know, we can always get our clutches on you. Even if you're a citizen of Indonesia or Antarctica, we're going to get you, you know. I'm going to treat you.
I'm trying to tell people that Julian is the proverbial head on the stake. He's the warning. You know, he is absolutely being made an example of. And I think Chelsea was made an example of. Snowden has been made an example of. But I think Julian's really getting the brunt of it right now. And I kind of wanted to ask you why you think it's so difficult to even get independent media, you know, the supposedly progressive lefty media, you know, YouTube channels or whatever. We can't even get them to cover it. And it seems like it would really be in their best interest to cover something like this, given the fact that it directly affects, you know, free press, free speech. And if they're coming for anybody next, it's probably going to be people like that. So what do you think it is about the Assange case that it you know, it's kind of like that third rail that's, you know, people just don't want to touch?
Well, Misty, I think it's part of the pattern here. Who has reported that the head of CrowdStrike has said there's no forensic evidence that the Russians hacked into the DNC computers? Who has reported that?
Probably Jimmy Dore, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably. I'm sure the guys have. I mean, I don't know.
Amy Goodman reported that?
I doubt it.
Now, that's interesting. You laugh, but that's really sad. I mean,
No,
I laugh because I don't want to cry.
Yeah, I still have a lot of love for Amy Goodman. I'm sad. I am. I know that in there is a real journalist who has sat feet away from Julian Assange and had wonderful, meaningful conversations with him. And to watch her go into full Trump derangement syndrome and like down the Russiagate rabbit hole, and yes, Glenn Greenwald was on, and yes, he got to present an alternative view on that show, but he didn't change the minds of the hosts, and he didn't change the tone of their coverage, and it's just it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. It is heartbreaking. It's she does an incredibly good job on domestic things. You know, whether it's the Native Americans or whatever it is, it's just terrific journalism. Now, I've known Amy a long time, and she's a very, very bright person. So I think I can only conclude that she considers it necessary to bend with the wind here. You mentioned she had really good early conversations with Julian Assange. Yes, but later, a couple of years later, when they agreed to talk about some discrete topic, she surprised them with, at the end, she said, so what about Oliver Stone there, huh? How about Oliver Stone? But what do you think about your conversations with Oliver Stone? Now, Julian was visibly upset. That wasn't part of the deal. And he dismissed it by saying, I don't have any truck with Oliver Stone, and I've never had any dealings with him at all. And that was the end of the interview. So even Amy, having been there, she'd been in the same place I have at the embassy, interviewing him and sensing the real deal there. Even she bends with the tide here. And so when you ask me why the alternative media has also been, has it been in Truth Out? No. Has it been in Common Dreams? You know, they used to publish my stuff automatically. I'd write it for Consortium News, make sure they knew about it, and next day you'd see it in Common Dreams or Truth Out or Counterpunch. No. They don't do that anymore. And I'm saying to myself, what the heck's going on here? Even with the alternative media, not to mention the mainstream media, it's pretty insidious. And that's why it's up to us, actually. That puts more burden on us, but also more opportunity. If we're the only if we're the only act in the game here, we need to find some way to become even more effective. And one thought that occurred to me is I often think of Stella Morris and the two little boys. Now there is Julian and Stella's two little boys, Max and Daniel or
Gabriel.
Gabriel, right? So those pictures, images, photos are worth 1 million words. My notion is to have that. This is the Assange family, okay? This is the people who are immediately affected. No father for 2-3 years, okay? No father forever? Are we going to do that to somebody who's a journalist? There has to be some strain of human conscience left in most people that we can adroitly, smartly use what's out there staring us in the face to good purpose. It's not exploiting anything. It's just saying, look, this is a human problem, for God's sake. Look at the humans that are most immediately affected. We're all affected in the end, but this is what's happening now. There must be a way we can do more of that, in my view.
One of the things that I think would be super impactful, especially with the trial happening right now, that Steve and I and Missy have tried to encourage other content creators to do, is get on when the trial starts, get on a live camera at 5 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, 2 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast, and literally just read through the live tweets as they're coming out until noon East Coast time. Because you can get, if you have Mohammed Almazi, Kevin Gostola, at Defense Assange, and a couple of these other tweets up, the live tweets coming from the journalists, you get a full perspective of the courtroom, including what's happening outside. So that's something that I would really like to try to encourage others to do. I'll be able to do it for the full third week of the trial, which, as dark as it is to say, like, I am happy to try to be one out of 7 billion people on the planet that are reading these live tweets as it's happening, so people can actually understand the true sense of outrage that's happening with Julian's case in real time. Because when you read through the tweets, just reading them in your head, you don't get a full sense and you don't always grasp the full context. But just going, like on Monday, I was able to do 2 hours from 5:30 a.m. till 7:30 a.m. And literally what you saw is the prosecutor with every single attorney, Lewis, just trying to bully and discredit them, not addressing any topics or anything like that. And it almost gets lost in the shuffle unless you are in real time going through each and every one of these statements that they're making. So I think that would be a phenomenal tide change, is just seeing these content creators and people that have built platforms get up at 5 o'clock in the morning or be up at 2 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast and just read as this is happening, and then switch to a different person and catch up on their tweet thread, and then switch to another and catch up on theirs. And then when court goes into recess, you get a 15 to 20 minute break on your stream. You can go do whatever and then hop back on and keep doing it until it's over. Because there's not any major coverage that's going line by line with this. And if we're going to watch our free speech be taken from us without even having the ability to literally watch it, it at least needs to be reported in 1930s style radio releases where people can sit down and at least hear what is happening in the courtroom in real time.
I kind of wanted to ask Ray what he thinks about how this is people, what's the word I'm looking for? Observers are being kept out of the courtroom. The public is being kept out of the courtroom, and we have what is it? 40 journalists in a
40
room.
journalists and parliamentarians that got thrown out.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, but the journalists that are trying to cover this case, which is one of maybe the most important court case of our time, I would venture to say yes. And we have journalists trying to cover it by live tweeting. They can't, there's no video. They can't even do audio. The public has no access to what's going on in that courtroom other than these poor reporters, and their thumbs have to be exhausted. I mean, I don't know how they're keeping up. But that's a crazy way to cover a case this big. So I'm just kind of wondering what Ray thinks about how publicly it's being kept from everybody. I mean, it's really, all of this stuff is happening right in front of us and nobody gives a shit, you know?
Well, again, I see this as a sort of imperial giving the middle finger. We don't care how draconian this seems. We don't care how out of order you think we are, or how extra legal. We're going to do this, and even though this is a political case and we're not allowed to do this, we're going to do it anyway. And there's, if you want to watch this thing, well, you could do that. We're not going to make it easier for you. And so it's just a kind of a arrogance, an imperial kind of hubris. That won't quit and is actually intended to dramatize who has the power here and who doesn't.
I don't know how much time you have, Ray, but I was wondering. So Trevor Tim did such a magnificent job dismantling QC Lewis, and I think that's probably what prompted him to forget to go home and forget his laptop charger and forget to have his papers, and basically have one of his underlings call in sick and use the magic phrase COVID-like symptoms in order to have that extra long weekend to prepare for Monday. In terms of witnesses driving home the point about the precedent that this will set and the political nature of it, is there anyone who stood out to you that has just been able to effectively communicate that? Because what I would like to do is adopt that verbiage, and I'd like to be able to get some flyers made up. I would like to start getting memes out and things of that nature. I'm just trying to figure out what was, at least in your mind, one of the more effective methods of communicating that.
Yeah, Steve, I appreciate your question. I really was out in the field all day. I noticed that Craig Murray has done another exhaustive report, which would have this kind of color in it and also substance. So,
I'm talking about like over the course of the 2 weeks.
I've been disappointed in how hard it's been for the defense counsel to make their points. But again, I have to say that I haven't had time to read each jot and tittle. And I'm sure that some of the transcripts would reveal that to you. I'm not able to. Sorry.
I am pretty grateful that the transcripts have become available, because I had no idea that was going to be a thing, given the way that they had shut down access to NGOs like Amnesty or Reporters Without Borders, and the very limited and just incompetent way that the technological side is being ran, you would think that the UK court could at least reach out to UC Global, who like had a live feed that streamed directly to the CIA 24 hours a day from the Ecuadorian embassy. It's not like they don't know their number. Or, there's a guy sitting in the courtroom whom I'm told has excellent computer skills. And yet they haven't asked that guy either. It seems like the tech issues are more I don't want to say completely intentional, but it seems like it's being used as just one more knife to add to the pile of the punishment being the process.
I agree. It's another element that shows that they don't really care very much, and that this persecution of Julian Assange is being done in a ham-handed way. And to the degree the technology works, well, it's fine. If it doesn't work, that's all right. And not least, if this is delayed as is possible, well, I think that Craig Murray was right initially when he said they just as soon Julian die in prison. This would solve lots of problems for the UK as well as the US. And he is, of course, being psychologically tortured. That we know because the UN rapporteur for torture has proven that with the help of psychiatrists. So, to the degree they want to make this point that, what's happening to Julian Assange, now he's dead. What's going to happen to you if you try to do anything like it? Well, all this kind of nonchalance about how professionally they proceed technically really is part of this this attempt to show that they don't give a rat's patootie about what's really going on technically. They're going to get this guy, and if it takes longer, well, maybe he'll die, and that will take this whole thing off our hands.
Yeah, I definitely think that's always kind of been their goal. They've really just been trying to wear him down systematically over the past decade. It's been, like I have said before, it's like a slow motion execution. Yeah. It's really kind of intense that, we're watching it happen and people don't seem at all concerned, but I guess that just means that the propaganda campaign was really effective. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt, but when Nils Melzer wrote that op-ed back in June of last year, he chose the occasion of the UN Memorial Day for Victims of Torture. He did an eloquent op-ed and shopped it around to the New York Times, the Guardian, the Le Monde, all the mainstream media outlets. And all of them said, no, thanks just the same. We won't publish it. And he ended up giving it to the Medium, and they did publish it on that specific day. But what he said in that is that, people encouraged me. The Julian Assange advocate said, please look into it. I put it off for a couple of years because I believed all the propaganda. I was brainwashed. And then I took an interest in it, and I talked to the people in the embassy. They said, "Oh, a pack of lies. Julian didn't behave that way." And I said, "Are you sure?" "Yes, a pack of lies." Then I went to Stockholm, and I'm fluent in Swedish. He's Swiss, so he's fluent in everything, I guess. I'm fluent in Swedish, and I read the stuff, and it was all doctored. The police doctored these things to proceed against Julian so that he could be held. So he says this in this op-ed. And doesn't it speak volumes that not one medium in the West would publish it, except the Medium, a website where it's on my website. It's on my website now too. But people need to read that, and then they can realize that they've been brainwashed too. So if the UN rapporteur for torture was brainwashed, it's no insult. It's not a problem to admit that you've been brainwashed too, but nobody does. Because nobody's read the op-ed. It does get sort of frustrating after a while, but we have to keep our hope up and have to realize that we don't have any alternative. but to push the truth out. And you never know, what was it? One of the publicists of the last century, I.F. Stone, he said, look, we going into this, you got to go into this kind of battle for truth with your eyes open. You got to realize that you're going to lose. And then you're going to lose. And then you're going to lose again. But someday, people who think the way you do and approach justice from your perspective are going to win. You may not live to see that. But meanwhile, when you're in this, try to keep some balance and some joy and some realization that what you're doing is good. And the reason it's good is because spreading truth around is ipso facto good. So that's our task here. And let's not look for immediate success. Victor Hugo in Les Miserables, he talks about Bishop Bienvenu. Here's the bishop that when the protagonist said that the bishop gave me these candlesticks, the bishop, oh yeah, you gave him the candlesticks. Well, what Hugo, the way he describes this bishop, his name was Bienvenu. Now, Bishop Bienvenu was really an odd duck because he didn't want to get ahead in life. He didn't want to become an archbishop. And he wasn't politically motivated, and so he could hardly get any priest to work in his diocese, And so he was regarded as unsuccessful. And then Hugo says, yes, success. Success, it's an ugly word because a lot of people think that it's the same as doing the right thing. And it's not the same as doing the right thing. It's not the same as virtue. It's not the same as courage. Success is something very different. And so if we can divest ourselves of this typical American trait, not to venture on any major adventure without some reasonable prospect of success, if we can really believe that the good is worth doing because it's good, results are not unimportant, but they're secondary. They're secondary to the goodness of the act. That's why I'm so delighted to be with you guys who are doing good action and trying to be faithful to the notion that this is really worth doing because it's good, and we have to kind of be patient about the outcome and not be diverted by visions of immediate success.
Chris Hedges said that I don't fight fascists because I'll win. I fight them because they're fascists. and I can't tell you how many times we said that, or at least I said that last week in DC when people would, come up and engage with us, why are you out here? Why are you doing this? And the people would be like, don't you think this is hopeless? And I would hit them with that, and they'd be like, oh, okay. I can see where you're coming from. You're still crazy, but I can see where you're coming from.
Well, that's progress, That's progress.
But Ray, I'm not very good at being patient, friend. I don't know how.
Tell me about it, Misty.
I'm really not. I'm really not.
So on the topic of patience, we had an interesting run-in as the Action for Assange crew yesterday. Actually, one of our call to actions with Reporters Without Borders is getting congressional candidates to recognize and then offer a motion to amend or build in their platform to amend the Espionage Act, specifically to allow for a public interest defense and not the prosecution of journalists and whistleblowers, as well as like 9 other points in their, I think it's like an 11 or 13 point agenda that they have, mostly built around the idea of a public dialogue about how we reached this point with the decay of our free press. And we ran into Paula Jean Swearingen on the internet yesterday. And she's someone that is fancied as an outsider candidate. She is on our email list for the Reporters Without Borders action that we have up right now, which is literally just emailing congressional candidates. I've put multiple different lists together for different contingencies that I see as politically powerful, at least within their spheres. But it was pretty interesting because there's this paradox that happens when you start asking someone, even as respectfully as can be, hey, can you comment on this? Can you make a statement on this? We assume you support this. Could you please put out what it is that we're asking you to put out? Because it's something that you should be in support of. And it turned into us being perceived as attacking Mrs. Swearingen for asking her in a delightfully respectful way, including with a phone call to myself and a phone call to Misty, about Julian's situation and if she would make a statement. So I was just wondering, Ray, if you could talk for a little bit about what some of the things are that people seeking offices of political influence, like obstacles they would run into as they come out to support Julian, and maybe some words of encouragement for people that are either on the fence about it or scared of retaliation from people like Pelosi and Steny Hoyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I can't fix Pelosi. All
No one can. No one.
All roads lead to Putin.
I have it in there.
It's really a lamentable situation, but basically, I believe it's that nobody knows what's really going on with Julian, that people have been brainwashed, as Niels Meltzer admits he was, and that what they hear in the media, and the only way they can be informed about this is the media, is so at odds with what we're saying. That it's kind of a cognitive dissonance that intrudes, and they say, "Oh my God, if this is right, oh my, no, this can't be right." In other words, it's easier to dismiss it than to face the facts. Here's an example. 2 years ago, August 4, 2018, I made a speech in Seattle. Okay, it was before a very progressive group, 150 people or so. Veterans for Peace was one of the co-sponsors, and I titled the piece "Russiagate: Can You Handle the Truth?" And guess what? They couldn't. They didn't have enough information to even believe or understand what I was saying. I tried to be pretty rudimentary, right? So that was quite a revelation to me. Among the things I said, now the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page exchange, I looked at the blank faces. So I said, well, how many of you know about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page? Raise your hands. Guess how many? 3. 3 people out of 150. And so I knew I had my homework to do. So I kept it pretty basic, and again, they were inclined to believe me because of the stuff that I've written in the past, but it was just simply too much for them, right? And so it was, when it was all over, they were very polite because of, sort of their friend, but none of them, maybe except maybe those 3, had a clue as to whether they should accept this very strange interpretation of what was going on. My motto, or my keynote for that whole thing was, "There's no there." Now, who said that? Well, Peter Strzok said that. When did he say it? He said it after 4 months of looking for a Russian connection with the Trump campaign. Why did he say that? He's talking to his lover, the lawyer for McCabe, the deputy director of the FBI, Lisa Page. He says, I don't know if I should. It's really hard. Mueller wants me to join the team that's going to do the investigation of Russiagate, But you know, Lisa, I'm reluctant because I know there's no there. Okay, so I finished saying to these folks, you're going to find out in due course that Peter Strzok, not knowing there would be a transcript of what he said, was right. There was no there. Now, when was that? That was August 4th, 2018, just before the midterms, right? So did Mueller know there was no there? And if so, why did he string this investigation out so that Trump could be under this cloud up to and through the election? Well, we know what happened. Democrats took back the House. And so in March of the following year, finally, Mueller comes out and says, there's no there, okay? So this is how crass the whole thing is. This is how politicized it is. This is how, unconscionable it is when we have these very, quote, universally highly respected lawyers like Mueller running these things for partisan purposes. So all I'm saying here is that that was very distressing. 150 very progressive people, but they got their news from Rachel Maddow. I made fun of her at one point, and people say, and they read the New York Times and the Seattle Times, and they don't know what's going on. So, you know, it's kind of exciting time because those of us who do know what's going on have a kind of open field, kind of fertile field to plant these seeds and let people know what's going on. I did a lot of study of classics, and if you're looking for a good guideline on how to start a speech like this, go to Cicero, who said that the key to get your points across in rhetoric is to render the audience benevolent, attentive, and docile, okay? In that order. So you do something to make them benevolent, and I tried to do that in this speech. Attentive, they were attentive enough. Docile, not so much, because there's too much of a challenge, okay? Now, last thing I'll say is that speech, however distressing it was for me afterwards, has gotten last time I checked, 225,000 views on YouTube. So what the hell, you know? Look at it and see if there was no there then in August of 18. There's no there in March of the following year. There's no there now. We have actually know from the head of CrowdStrike there was no forensic evidence. But we have lots of stuff to deal with. The idea is to find audience that are willing to be made benevolent, attentive, and docile.
One of the big successes that we had in our first week out in DC was just that, in the way that you describe it. But it was actually outside the Lincoln Memorial, where we had essentially a captive audience of about 50 to 75 people, depending on the time, that were literally just sitting on the stairs. And I don't know if you know this, but you and Bill Binney made a surprise appearance at the Lincoln Memorial, because we went back and played our 1 year anniversary, the 25th week of the Free Assange Vigil, where we had you and Bill on.
25th?
We played through that entire thing. And there were people that were coming down and like, oh, this isn't live. Like, they're not actually in this tent talking. So the conversations here also was able to extend to educate an audience that was specifically at the Lincoln Memorial, who were benevolent, docile, and captive, or whatever words you were using. But I think that overall, getting people out in the streets right now to specifically educate people is how we win this battle for free speech. Because without an informed and educated public, there's really no hope in winning any battle. And that's what the core fundamental principles of free speech are. And it may suck the way that it has to be done, literally person by person, countering whatever propaganda they've had for, I don't know, the last 10 years, if not longer. But the way that you're able to put information together and put it out in the public, I think is super important. So I just really appreciate the fact that for almost as long as I've been alive, you've been going and debunking these different things, whether it was the war in Iraq or in this case, Julian Assange's prosecution.
Well, thanks.
But I think we are running a little out of time here. I would like to give you the chance to let people know where to find you, Ray, and your final thoughts about Julian's court case and what you think is going to be coming down the pipe with Mr. Ellsberg tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I look forward to Dan Ellsberg testifying. He is 86, I think, now, which is not too many years older than I, but he's just as alert as can be and eloquent, and one of my best friends, but also one of my heroes. I guess I forget what else you asked me to talk about, Andrew.
Just some final thoughts and where people can find you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I encourage you all to do exactly what Andrew just said in terms of getting out there and spreading the word around. I see, and it's interesting little vignette about the Lincoln Memorial. There again is an example of technology, that Julian was so expert at, using it to imaginative, inventive ways. And it need not be one-on-one exclusively. You get a little group together and say, look, we got some stuff to tell you. It won't take very long, and then we'll have a little interchange. So I'm hopeful that that will help. Now, with respect to Julian, I pray a lot. And one of the reasons I wear this beard is because every time I see a mirror or a window or something, I'm reminded of Julian. So I send up a little prayer asking that Julian will be taken care of. What I would like is for people to know that I think Julian has a reason to live that 99% of the people are completely unaware of. And I see those little children, those two little boys and Stella, as the reason why Julian will not give up, will not succumb to this kind of pressure, and will not commit suicide or do anything like that. So that's his reason for going, as well as the other reasons that are obvious. So I'd ask you to remember him. Those of you who think of prayer the way I do, you might want to stack up some. Those of you who want to be reminded not to dismiss Julian, because you never see him in the news, do you? Well, do something weird, like look as disheveled as he did when they took them out of the, and I compliment you, Andrew, on your dishevelment there, and Steve too. Misty, we can't expect that of you, but there is a
I'll work on it.
There has to be some kind of a feminine way to do this without the beard. So now I don't know what to expect the next coming weeks. It's very easy to be depressed. It's very easy to be kind of cynical, but things are the way they are. And the British system, so to speak, is the way it is. And I know that very well from my Irish cousins and the way they were subjected to English justice, so to speak. So let's keep our chins up. Let's keep our ideals pure. And let's keep trying to get people to realize that there is another side to this whole thing. And again, my compliments to you and my thanks for letting me hold on at this length.
Oh, we love having you on with us, Ray. I just want to remind everyone before we go that we do have the call to actions up on the website. There is demanding the public video link and media gallery. There is the Reporters Without Borders coordinated campaign we have going on, as well as contacting the Department of Justice and a few others, and there will be more put out as we go throughout the week. But I want to thank everybody for watching. I think across all of our platforms, and this is the first time since before COVID hit that we've managed to get over 120 people viewing the vigils. So I'm super grateful for everyone that's been helping out behind the scenes, sharing the link. Big thank you to the team that is in DC right now, and I will be rejoining them later this week. Special thank you to Kimber for holding it down out there so well. And Josh for running the ones and twos. My name's Andrew Smith. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew Zigman. You can find us at action_4 Assange on Twitter. And all of our call to actions and updates, including the action submission box, is up on our website at action4Assange.com.
And I'm Misty. You can find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. I also want to say happy birthday to Anthony in the chat. He's great.
Happy
and
birthday,
so,
yeah.
yeah, happy birthday. I also host another show called Facts on the Ground with my friend Jesse. We have a lot of really cool episodes we've done recently. We got to interview Juan Passarelli as well. If you guys haven't seen that, go check it out. He's awesome. He was so fun to talk to. I mean, you know, it's a shitty topic, but he was like so fun to talk to. You guys know what I mean. Anyway, so that's it. That's where you can find me. And thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Ray, for coming on. Seriously, you're like my favorite person. It's story time with Ray. It makes me happy.
I'm Steve Poikin, and I host a show called Slow News Day. If you're looking for it on YouTube, you type in Slow News Day Podcast. I'm also on Rockfin and D Live. Thank you, everyone in the chat for hanging out with us tonight. We love you. Huge thanks to everyone who donated to the GoFundMe to make DC possible. You guys are incredible. We love you very much. Thank you, Ray. It is always a pleasure. I appreciate the time that you're willing to share with us. My co-hosts, Andrew and Misty, Super Josh on the ones and twos, Mean Panda with the graphics work. We will see you soon.
Let me, may I say a final word?
Absolutely.
My youngest son, who constructed and populates my website, yells at me if I don't mention where I can be found, and that is RayMcGovern.com. Very easy to remember.
I put it in chat a few times.
He put me on Twitter as well. I'm doing a lot of Twitter now, at Ray McGovern. That's it, at Ray McGovern. I'm on Instagram and, of course, on Facebook. My son takes care of that, and he says to me, Dad, you don't mention your website, raymcgovern.com. I'm not going to do this stuff anymore. And also always say, if you don't get it, you don't get it. So there you go. If you don't get it, you don't get it. raymcgovern.com. Embarrassingly self-serving.
No, it's a great site. I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. And we'll see you soon. Hopefully, we can get back with Kevin Gustola for some early morning live commentary this week. That was ridiculous. And if you haven't seen that, you can watch three deliriously tired, incredibly informed people grumble at each other for a little bit. Until next time, guys, good luck to us all.